What's up, Big Bear Nation? Welcome back to the homestead. With all of the things that have happened recently, whether it's egg shortages, inflation, avian flu, all of these different things, there are a lot of people out there that are considering raising chickens. So that means there are a lot of first-time chicken owners out there. And there were a couple of things that I've seen on posts or comments that I felt like deserved its own video. So I'm gonna tell you 5 things that you may not have known about chickens. Now, one of the first things that you need to know about chickens is that when they're this age, it takes them at least 4 to 5 months to get to this age. They don't start laying, obviously, right away. And I think a lot of times people forget about that. So they go to order these chicks when it's already too late. They want eggs now, but they're gonna have to wait at least 4 to 5 months before these guys start laying eggs. So when you're considering ordering chickens strictly for egg production, sometimes it makes a little bit more sense to go ahead and get a couple of pullets that are already, you know, 6 to 8 weeks, 10, 12 weeks old. You're gonna pay a little bit more, but one, you don't have to worry about the stress of whether or not these guys are gonna make it, because you may end up, you know, you may order 20 and only end up with 10. So sometimes it makes a little bit more sense to go ahead and buy a bird that's already laying or is about to be laying, because this can take quite a while before you get to this stage. Did you know that chickens only have a finite number of eggs that they're going to lay throughout their life? They're born with ova, and once each one of those turns into an egg, that's it. There's no more eggs. There's no way that you can make them produce more eggs. So at that point, when they stop laying, they either become your pet or they become dinner. Now, one thing that I wish I had known sooner, and it's kind of a no-brainer, but you gotta have calcium in a chicken's diet in order for them to lay eggs. And I'll tell you how I figured this one out. Last year, I was raising chicks and meat birds, and I had my laying hens. And I was looking at just the protein count on the food. And so I thought, well, instead of buying chick feed and buying the laying mash, I would just go with the chick feed because the percentage of the protein was higher. Made sense to me. Well, then my chickens stopped laying. I talked to the guy at the feed store and he's like, well, yeah, the protein's the same, but there's absolutely no oyster shells or any kind of calcium in the chick starter. So as soon as we swapped over to laying mash, which then had oyster shell in it, they started back laying again. So make sure that if you supplement their feed or whatever you do, that you have some kind of calcium in their meal so that they can produce nice, healthy, strong eggs for you. Now, another thing while we're talking about what they eat, it's important also for chickens to have some kind of grit in their diet. Now, the reason I bring that up is because chickens don't have teeth. See? No teeth, just a beak. And what they do is that grit gets down in their gizzard and it mashes up the food for them to be able to digest it and get all of the protein and the calcium and the nutrients into their digestive tract. So if you don't have grit, you're gonna have a very unhealthy chicken. And one way to really know if they're, if they're getting the grit in their diet is you can check their crop. And their crop is right underneath, like off to the side of their head. And you'll see like a little lump where they're breaking down that food. And if that thing gets too full and they're not like releasing it, you got a problem. So make sure that you have grit, whether it's when they're free ranging, they'll just pick up sand. They'll pick it up off of the ground. And that's why a lot of people do free range, because then they don't have to worry about that. But if you're just putting them in a coop and they don't have access to the dirt, that's something that you're gonna have to consider. So a controversial thing that seems to rear its ugly head every year is molting. Molting is a process where the chickens let go of all of their older feathers and produce new feathers, okay? Now, the reason why I say it's controversial is it usually coincides with the time of year when we don't have as much sunlight. As soon as the sunlight starts, we start having less daylight hours, the chickens will naturally go into a molt. And the molt is not just to get rid of their old feathers and produce new ones. It's also a natural time for their bodies to rest and relax, because it takes a lot of energy to produce an egg each day, because a lot of your layers will lay 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes more than that. And so they need all of that energy to be able to do that. Now, the reason why that's important is because molting takes up a lot of protein as well. When they're making those new feathers, it takes like 85% of their protein intake to produce those new feathers, which means that if they're using protein to also produce eggs, guess what happens? No eggs. So naturally, from the fall to the spring, your chickens will molt and you will have less eggs or no eggs at all. Molting usually happens after the chicken is about a year old, depending on the seasons, obviously, right? So if you bought your chickens in the springtime, they may not molt in the fall. They may wait until the spring, which can kind of be a problem getting into spring egg production. Now, molting normally it can take anywhere from 5 weeks to 12 weeks. It can take a while for all of those feathers to fall out and the rest of them to come in. So one thing that you can do to speed up this process and maybe even help them produce eggs during the molting process is to up their protein count. The normal count's like 16%, but if you can bump that up to about 20–22%, you could possibly get some eggs out of the whole situation. One thing that you can do is feed them either black soldier fly larvae like you can get at GrowVeg, or you can do mealworms. You can raise those on your own, or you can go to Amazon. I'm sure we have an affiliate link down at the bottom for that. There's all different options for protein, but if you'll bump that protein count up, but remember you got to have that grit in there as well, then you could possibly speed the process up, or maybe even get some eggs out of it. Well, I hope this video has helped you out a little bit. I know there were a lot of questions about different things, and I've hoped that I've answered some of those. This kind of takes a little bit of the mystery out of egg production and raising chickens for eggs. Thank you for stopping by the Big Bear Homestead. God bless. Have a nice day.